had that information before. Now you can have it the same way I can have it on my school. Then we use that information to target a number of schools for national partnerships, and in those schools we've proved that if you bring some more resources and you tie it to some new ways of working, you'll lift the standards for those kids. And those new ways of working include empowering principals so that they get more of a say over what's happening in their school, boosting teacher quality so the teachers aren't just, there's your class, do your best. They're supported every day in what is a really tough job. Introducing into those schools the ability to have specialists, maybe a literacy coach who can sit and watch the teacher's classroom practice and then give them real feedback, what you're doing well, what you need to work on, maybe a librarian, maybe a language sorts of things. Then engaging parents in school, because all of the evidence shows great schools have great school communities in there working with them, alongside them. So they're kind of the big reform directions: empowered principals, better teaching, access to specialists, community engaged, all of it transparent, that we want to achieve through our new school funding reforms. So schools that have more resources, and they'd have to have an improvement plan that brought these elements together, and then everybody, not just me, but everybody here through my school, would be able to hold the school to account for getting it done. For the kids, what does it mean? Well, hopefully where we get to is every child gets their own learning plan. Now that sounds like jargon, but what it basically means is that the child who's falling behind does get the reading recovery support they need, and the child that streaks ahead and bored gets the extra hard work that's going to keep them engaged. So it's not one size fits all. You sit at the back of the class not understanding what's going on and no one comes and helps you. You sit at the front of the class bored because you've already done the assignment in 10 minutes when everybody else in the class is still struggling with it. That every child gets something that engages them and pushes them towards their full potential.
Thank you.
Sharon, thank you. Let's get another question.
Good evening, Prime Minister. I'm a retired professional engineer and my name's Graham, and I hope you don't think this is a set-up from the last question. I have 5 grandchildren and they attend a Catholic school, and I'd like to vote Labor if you can tell me why they'd be better off under Labor.
Well, I happily can tell you that, so there we have it. What we're doing with these school funding reforms that we've just talked about with Sharon and that agenda for improvement, we're focusing on every school. Public schools, Catholic schools, independent schools. We're creating a new school resource standard. So how much money, how many resources do you need in a school to get every child a great education in the school? To do that, we know that there's an amount per student you need, because we've worked this all through national partnership schools, reference schools, which is what I talked to Sharon about as well. But we've also worked out it's not one size fits all. You need more money, a loading, if kids are disadvantaged. You need more money, a loading, if kids come from non-English speaking backgrounds. You need extra support if kids have got disabilities. You need extra support because it costs more to have schools in regional Australia. You need extra support if you're going to have a small school, because there are fixed costs and there are less kids to absorb those fixed costs. So we want every school to have this school resource standard inclusive of the loadings that have been worked out for the kids in that school. For Catholic education, over the next 6 years, what that means is an extra $1.4 billion above what they get now in base funding, and it means around an extra $1 billion more in indexation. So a big increase in funding. Why is that fair? Because many Catholic schools have made it their mission to teach some very poor communities or ordinary communities. I mean that in the nicest way, communities that don't have a lot of money. And so they should get federal support. They should get money to make sure their schools are coming up to the school resource standard, and under us they will.
So you're basically saying that wants more help as well? What
I'm saying is every school would have, it's a 6-year transition, every school would end up with the amount of money in that school to get those kids a great education. For public schools, that would be a mix of federal and state government money. For Catholic and independent schools, that would be a mix of federal money, some state money, and the money that you pay in fees. How would we work out the money you pay in fees, or the parents of your grandchildren, so your son or daughter, whoever it is?
Trickle down.
Yeah, that's right. How would we work out how much is fair? Well, the same way we do now. There would be a capacity to pay socioeconomic loading the way there is now, socioeconomic status. But because there are many schools, I can tell you many schools in the Catholic system who are below the school resource standard, they would look forward to more money. There are some schools that are above the school resource standard, not many, but there are some. Those schools would get the same funding deal they would have had if we hadn't changed the system.
Does that convince you, Graham? You said you would be happy to vote Labor if you could be convinced on this.
I'm sorry, I'll think about it.
You'll digest that. Okay, fair enough. Graham,
fair enough.
Thanks so much. I think we've got time for one or two more questions. Let's try and squeeze them in. Thank you.
Good evening, Prime Minister. My name is Kitty. As most of us here are immigrants somehow to this nation, I'm glad to know that there are assistance to help those to settle and enter the workforce. As you talk about tonight, about building skills, developing the future, there are a significant number of Australians relying on social benefits, for instance, unemployment benefits, and have been facing difficulties in getting the experience required to get jobs. So how are you going to provide opportunities to those that are unemployed and living on the benefits to bridge the skill gap to gain employment?
Okay, thanks, Kitty. That's a really good question. I mean, we do have people who are unemployed by the standards of the world, given all the economic turmoil there's been after the global financial crisis. We've got, a low unemployment rate compared with the US or countries in Europe, but there are still people who are unemployed. They want work, they don't have work, and so we've got to be thinking, how can we help them? The work we do is directed at trying to help people get job opportunities. So got to keep the economy growing, creating new jobs, and then we've got to focus on people's skills. And we've got a range of programs through our employment services to help support people to get the skills they need to get into work. Now, for some people, that's a shorter journey. For some people, it's a much longer journey. I mean, there's some people obviously who need assistance with English language, or they went to school in Australia, they're English language speakers, but school failed them. They failed at school. They never learned to read or write or do maths. So, most of the jobs today, people have to be literate and numerate. For some, it's about getting them an apprenticeship opportunity. For some, it's about supporting them with a university place. There are a range of programs to try and help people get the skills they need to get work ready, good qualifications that can get them a job. So there's no individual through employment services.
Is the level of New Start allowance fair?
I think it's incredibly tough for people on New Start. I'm not going to try and pretend anything else. Yes, it's really tough. But, New Start is there. It's not a lifetime payment. It's there to tide people through until they get back to work. And so, there's a choice to be made about how much you invest in the payment, how much you invest in creating the work opportunities. They're never easy decisions.
Kitty, thanks so much. I think we've got one more question, our last question. Thank you, madam.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Valentina and I'm a disability pensioner. My primary issue and concern is in the public health department, in which I find there is a great shortfall. The primary care is relatively good around the nation. You can go to a doctor, bulk billing clinic, and the services are readily accessed. But when it comes to continuing treatment, you then are on a waiting list, sometimes months, sometimes even years. And going from personal experience, I know how painful certain conditions can be. and it's very, very hard waiting for someone to offer you a bed or